Hello, everyone. Welcome to Learn English with Podcast. I'm Nikki.
Hi there. I'm Tony.
Today, we have a fun topic. We are going to talk about tips for traveling on a budget.
Yes, we will give you some great tips and advice to help you have a fantastic trip without spending too much money.
So, Tony, what do you think is the best tip for traveling on a budget?
Let me think. I believe planning is very important. If you plan your trip well, you can save a lot of money.
That's right. For example, booking flights and hotels in advance can be much cheaper.
Yes, and look for deals and discounts online. Sometimes you can find really good prices.
Another tip is to travel in the off-season. When fewer people are traveling, prices are lower.
That's a great idea, Nikki. I remember one time I traveled to Italy in October. It was not very crowded, and I found cheap tickets.
Wow, that sounds nice. I also like to use public transportation when I travel. It's cheaper than taxis or renting a car.
Yes, and it's also a great way to see the city and meet local people.
Right. And don't forget about food. Eating at local markets or small restaurants is cheaper and you can try delicious local dishes.
Exactly. I once had the best tacos at a small market in Mexico. They were cheap and so tasty.
Yummy. Now, we are going to hear some guests telling their own stories about traveling on a budget.
Yes, we have some great stories for you today. Let's welcome our first guest.
Hi, welcome to our podcast. Can you tell us your name?
Hi, my name is Sammy.
Nice to meet you, Sammy. Can you tell us about your budget travel experience?
Sure. Last year, I traveled to Thailand with my friends. We wanted to save money, so we stayed in hostels and used buses to get around.
That sounds interesting. How was the hostel experience?
It was great. Hostels are much cheaper than hotels, and we met many nice people from different countries.
That's cool. Did you find it easy to travel by bus?
Yes. It was easy and very cheap. We could see beautiful places and meet local people.
Did you try any local food?
Oh, yes. We ate at street markets. The food was delicious and very cheap.
What was your favorite dish?
I loved the pad thai. It was only about $1.
Wow, that's amazing. It sounds like you had a great time.
Yes, thank you for sharing your story, Sammy.
Now, let's talk more about how traveling on a budget can be fun and exciting.
Yes, I think Sammy's story shows that you don't need a lot of money to have a great trip.
Exactly. With a little planning and some smart choices, you can travel and enjoy new places without spending too much.
And don't forget, it's also about the experiences and the people you meet.
Very true, Tony. Now, let's hear from our next guest. Let's welcome our next guest. Hi, can you tell us your name?
Hi, I'm Mike.
Nice to meet you, Mike. Can you share your budget travel experience with us?
Sure. Last summer, I traveled to Spain. I wanted to save money, so I used couch surfing.
Oh, that's interesting. Can you tell us more about couch surfing?
Of course. Couch surfing is a way to stay with local people for free. You stay in their home, and it's a great way to make new friends.
That sounds fun. How was your experience with couch surfing?
It was amazing. I stayed with a family in Barcelona. They were very kind and showed me around the city.
That's great. Did you find it easy to use couch surfing?
Yes, it's very easy. You just need to create a profile and look for hosts in the city you are visiting.
Did you save a lot of money using couch surfing?
Yes, I saved a lot on accommodation. I also got free meals because the family I stayed with cooked for me.
That's awesome. What was your favorite part of the trip?
My favorite part was visiting Park Güell. It's a beautiful park in Barcelona, and the entrance fee was very cheap.
Wow, that sounds amazing. Thank you for sharing your story, Mike.
Yes, thank you, Mike. Your story shows how couch surfing can be a great way to travel on a budget.
Now let's talk more about different ways to save money while traveling.
Sure, Tony. Besides couch surfing, you can also stay in hostels or use Airbnb to find cheap places to stay.
Yes, and sometimes you can find discounts or special offers if you book in advance.
Another tip is to stay in smaller towns or cities. They are often cheaper than big tourist spots.
That's true. And don't forget about camping, if you like nature. Camping can be a very cheap way to travel.
Yes, and it's also a lot of fun. Now, let's talk about food. Eating at local markets is a great way to save money and try new things.
Yes, street food is often cheap and very tasty. I remember having amazing tacos in Mexico for just a few dollars.
That sounds delicious. Another tip is to cook your own meals if you can. Many hostels and Airbnb places have kitchens.
That's a good idea. You can buy fresh food from local markets and cook it yourself. It's cheaper and healthier.
For transportation, using buses and trains can save a lot of money. Also, consider walking or renting a bike. It's cheaper, and you can see more of the place you are visiting.
Yes. And if you travel with friends, you can share costs for accommodation and transportation.
Great tips, Tony. Remember, it's not just about saving money, but also about enjoying the journey and meeting new people.
Exactly. Now, let's move on to the next part of our podcast. We will hear from more guests with their own budget travel stories.
Now, let's hear from our next guest. Hi, welcome to our podcast. Can you tell us your name?
Hi, I'm Emma.
Nice to meet you, Emma. Can you tell us about your budget travel experience?
Sure. I traveled to Japan last year. I wanted to save money, so I used a Japan Rail Pass.
What is a Japan Rail Pass?
It's a special pass for tourists. You can use it to travel on trains all over Japan for a fixed price.
That sounds very convenient. How much did you save with the pass?
I saved a lot. Train tickets in Japan can be expensive, but with the pass, I traveled to many cities for a very good price.
Which cities did you visit?
I visited Tokyo, Kyoto, Osaka, and Hiroshima. Each city was amazing.
Wow. That's a lot of traveling. How did you find cheap places to stay?
I stayed in hostels and used Airbnb. Both were very affordable.
Did you eat at local markets too?
Yes, I did. The food was delicious and not expensive. I loved the sushi and ramen.
Sounds delicious. Did you have any special experiences during your trip?
Yes, I visited a traditional tea house in Kyoto. It was very beautiful and peaceful.
That sounds wonderful. Thank you for sharing your story, Emma.
Yes, thank you, Emma. Your story shows how using a rail pass can help save money and make travel easier.
Exactly. It's all about finding the best deals and making smart choices.
Now, let's talk more about how listening to podcasts like this one can help improve your English.
Yes. Listening to English podcasts is a great way to learn new words and practice understanding spoken English.
When you listen to stories and tips about travel, you hear real-life conversations. This helps you learn how people speak in different situations.
For example, today we learned words like couch surfing, rail pass, hostel, and local market.
And when you hear these words in context, it's easier to remember them and understand their meaning.
Another good idea is to take notes while listening. Write down new words and phrases, and then look them up later.
Yes, and try to use these new words in your own sentences. Practice makes perfect.
Listening to different topics also helps you learn about new cultures and ideas. It's interesting and educational.
And don't forget, it's okay to listen to the podcast more than once. Each time you listen, you might understand more and learn something new.
Exactly. Repetition is a great way to improve your listening skills and expand your vocabulary.
So, keep listening to English podcasts, take notes, and practice using new words. You'll see great improvement over time.
Great advice, Tony. Now, let's continue with our podcast and hear from our next guest. Now, let's hear from our final guest. Hi, welcome to our podcast. Can you tell us your name?
Hi, I'm John.
Nice to meet you, John. Can you share your budget travel experience with us?
Sure. I traveled to India last year. I wanted to save money, so I volunteered at a school.
Volunteering sounds interesting. Can you tell us more about it?
Yes, I worked as a volunteer teacher. In exchange, I got free accommodation and meals.
That's a great way to save money. How was your experience as a volunteer?
It was amazing. I loved teaching the kids and learning about the local culture.
Did you have time to explore the country?
Yes, I did. I traveled on weekends and used local buses and trains, which were very cheap.
What places did you visit?
I visited Delhi, Jaipur, and Agra. I saw the Taj Mahal, which was incredible.
That sounds amazing. Did you find it easy to volunteer?
Yes, there are many organizations that help you find volunteer opportunities. It's a great way to travel and give back.
That's very inspiring, John. Thank you for sharing your story.
Yes, thank you, John. Your story shows how volunteering can be a great way to travel on a budget.
Now, let's talk more about some tips and advice for budget travelers.
Sure, Tony. One important tip is to always plan ahead. Look for cheap flights, accommodation, and activities before you travel.
Yes, and be flexible with your travel dates. Sometimes traveling during the week or in the off-season can save you a lot of money.
Another tip is to pack light. This can help you avoid extra baggage fees and make it easier to move around.
Also, consider using public transportation instead of taxis. It's much cheaper and you get to experience the local way of life.
And don't forget to look for free activities. Many cities have free museums, parks, and events that you can enjoy without spending a lot of money.
Yes, and always try to interact with locals. They can give you the best tips on where to eat, what to see, and how to get around.
Great advice, Tony. Now let's talk a bit more about how listening to English podcasts can help improve your language skills.
Good idea, Nikki. Listening to podcasts helps you get used to different accents and speaking speeds.
Yes. And it also helps you learn how to use new words and phrases in real-life situations.
For example, in this episode, we talked about traveling on a budget. You learned words like volunteer, local transportation, and off-season.
And when you hear these words in context, it helps you remember them better and understand how to use them.
Another tip is to repeat what you hear. Try to mimic the pronunciation and intonation of the speakers.
Yes, and practice speaking out loud. This will help you build confidence and improve your speaking skills.
And if you find it difficult to understand everything at first, don't worry. It's normal. Just keep listening and practicing.
Exactly. The more you listen, the more you will improve. So, keep listening to English podcasts, take notes, and practice using new words.
Great advice, Nikki. Now, let's wrap up our discussion on budget travel with some final thoughts.
Let's recap some of the key words we learned during the show. We have 7 important words and phrases to review.
Yes, let's go over them. Our first word is couch surfing.
Couch surfing is when you stay with local people for free while traveling. Mike used couch surfing in Spain to save money and make new friends.
Exactly. It's a great way to meet new people and see how locals live. Our second word is rail pass.
A rail pass is a special ticket that lets you travel on trains for a fixed price. Emma used a Japan rail pass to travel around Japan cheaply.
It's very useful for long-distance travel. Our third word is hostel.
A hostel is a cheap place to stay, usually with shared rooms. Both Emma and Mike mentioned staying in hostels to save money.
Hostels are great for meeting other travelers. Our fourth word is local market.
A local market is a place where people buy and sell food and goods. Emma talked about eating delicious and cheap food at local markets in Japan.
Local markets are also great for experiencing local culture. Our fifth word is volunteer.
To volunteer means to work for free, usually to help others. John volunteered at a school in India, and in return, he got free accommodation and meals.
Volunteering is a wonderful way to travel and give back to the community. Our sixth word is off-season.
Off-season is the time of year when fewer people travel. Tony mentioned that traveling during the off-season can save you a lot of money.
Yes, prices are usually lower for flights and accommodation. Our seventh word is public transportation.
Public transportation includes buses, trains, and subways that anyone can use. John used local buses and trains in India to travel cheaply.
Using public transportation is not only cheaper but also lets you see more of the local area.
Let's repeat the words and their meanings one more time. Couch surfing, staying with local people for free.
Rail pass, a ticket to travel on trains for a fixed price.
Hostel, a cheap place to stay with shared rooms.
Local market, a place to buy and sell food and goods.
Volunteer, working for free to help others.
Off-season, the time of year with fewer travelers.
Public transportation, buses, trains, and subways for public use.
Great job, everyone. Make sure to practice these words and use them in your own sentences.
Yes, practicing new vocabulary is very important. And don't forget to listen to the podcast again to improve your listening skills.
Exactly. Repetition helps you remember and understand better.
We hope you enjoyed today's episode and found it helpful. Well, that's all for today's episode of Learn English with Podcast.
We hope you enjoyed our discussion on budget travel and picked up some useful tips along the way.
Remember, if you enjoyed the show, don't forget to subscribe to our podcast for more episodes like this one.
And don't hesitate to give us a like and share this episode with your friends who are also learning English.
We love hearing from our listeners, so feel free to leave us a comment with any suggestions for future topics or any questions you may have.
Thank you for tuning in, and we'll see you next time on Learn English with Podcast.
Bye for now.